taxes are stifling the growth of old and new businesses alike, and all but eliminating new opportunities. It is difficult, if not impossible, for my generation to pursue our idea of entrepreneurship when faced with such an overwhelming tax burden. In starting up a business, the idea is to work hard and prosper. But with our current tax structure, businesses barely have the opportunity to get off the ground, let alone prosper. Philadelphia is the highest taxed city in the nation, the highest. And yet, the answer we always hear is to tax more of this, regulate more of that, and impose more fees all around. If that's not corruption, then I don't know what is. Our jobs aren't only being outsourced to nations like China and India, but they are going to other states that are much more corporate friendly, like Indiana, South Carolina, and Texas. My generation will follow these jobs to pursue their career. They have no choice. And as my peers continue to leave, the tax base continues to shrink, resulting in an impossible tax burden on our senior citizens. Too many of these people are forced out of their homes, homes that they have paid off decades ago, because they cannot afford to pay the ever-rising property taxes. Without a constantly replenished workforce, no one is left to shoulder the burden, and we all become victims. That is corruption, pure and simple. And what are our property taxes getting us anyway? What do we have to show for it? Educationally, we aren't keeping pace with the other states, but instead we throw more and more money at a failed system. The system isn't working, and right now we can't compete. Pennsylvania can't compete. Corruption, in one of its most obvious forms, is when maintaining the broken status quo is chosen over ensuring opportunities for future generations. In failing the children and future generations, this adversely affects all of us, whether it be by increased property tax or a workforce that is dysfunctional and illiterate. My generation is technically savvy. We grew up with computers, cell phones, and most importantly, the internet. We have the ability to access and process unlimited amounts of information, and yet, many of us are lacking necessary fundamental skills. When I think back to my days of school and education and math class, I don't remember a time when I was taught how to balance my checkbook properly, or what an interest rate was and what that would mean when I was paying back my student loans and my credit cards. I wasn't even, advised to spend less money than I took in. Fortunately, my parents did that. But imagine if these principles were part of every school's curriculum. Simple, yet essential. But why should we care about these fundamental skills? What examples have we been given that promote this lifestyle knowledge, fiscal responsibility and restraint? Our state government certainly hasn't been an example. Since I registered to vote 6 years ago, Pennsylvania has never passed a budget on time. That is insane. Government spending increases drastically while our state revenue is decreasing. Our state needs to tighten its belt, just like families do when times get tough. We need to make the difficult but necessary decision to cut government spending across the board. And we need to adopt a mindset of innovation rather than business as usual. We sit upon an immense, precious natural resource, the Marcellus Shale. That natural gas that, if extracted wisely, will create long-term sustainable jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs. If we approach this resource with a mindset geared towards innovation, both technologically and tax-wise, our state and nation will take a huge step towards energy efficiency and independence. And yes, if we embrace this resource with a preservation mentality, that is not to tax it to death before it is given the opportunity to bring new life to our state, then we can and we will turn this ship around. We want to prosper, not just survive. Our state strategically rests in the most populous region of the country, between the prominent cities of New York and Washington, D.C., but with a much lower cost of living. Pennsylvania has abundant natural resources that could propel us to the front lines and be new leaders in energy efficiency and independence. The history of our great state is comparable to none other in this nation, for we alone were the birthplace of the Republic. The timeless Constitution was signed in our city of brotherly love. The founders of our nation saw hope for the future here in this very state, and I wouldn't be here today if I didn't hold true to that hope as well. That's why I volunteer my time. That's why I pay attention, and that's why I get involved. I took my petition door to door in my neighborhood to run for committeewoman because I believe in being actively involved in order to inspire change. I ask of you only this: let us in. Let my generation in. Don't ignore us, don't brush us off, don't push us aside. I implore you to use our energy, our vigor, our passion, and our youth, and in turn, let us grow from your guidance, your experience, and your wisdom. If we come together, then none of us will have to fight against this widespread corruption alone. Think back to the story earlier of the passengers on the subway and put yourself in their position. You witnessed the abuse and see that no one else is moving. Your heart is pounding, and you're scared of what could happen to you, but you know that what you are witnessing is terribly wrong. You turn to the person next to you, and you ask them for their help. I am asking for your help. Let's not shy away from the intimidation of corruption, and instead, let's come together for the future of this state. It is impossible to predict the repercussions of one's actions, but fairly easy to determine the result of inaction. The status quo will maintain its dominance. I believe that Pennsylvania could and Pennsylvania must be better, and I will continue to pursue action aimed at achieving that result. The question is, how many others are willing to give it a shot? Thank you.